Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Lynn. I am a customer service representative here at WarmlyYours, and today I am joined by.
I'm Scott from WarmlyYours. How convenient. We're both from the same company. Today's your lucky day.
Who would have guessed? So, today we're going to be talking about some tips from the pros, which would be us and some of our people who have installed our products before, who've done a lot of work with us and know a lot about, how to do these installations. So, we're going to be talking about planning and installing your floor heating system. And if you have any questions, you can type those in either the sidebar chat or at the bottom of the screen in the ask a question module. We'll see those, if not right away, then by the end of the presentation, and definitely get to your questions. So can you tell us a little bit, Scott, about what we're talking about today?
Well, we're not only sharing our expertise, but we're also sharing hints from people that have installed our products multiple times and had successful installations. We're going to be talking about electric floor heating in general, and then tips for installing that electric floor heating. So these are not only words from our mouths, but they're from the words of people that are out there doing it every day, and we consider the feedback that we get from these webinars and from the daily webinars that we do every day. We're always taking advantage to see what the customers think, see if they have a better way of doing things, and we check it out. So that's what we're going to be doing today.
Awesome. So we like to consider ourselves floor heating experts. We have been around, Warmly Yours has been around since 1999. So we've been doing this for a very long time. We know a lot of the tricks of the trade. We are actually the first to provide on our website an online tool for project planning so that you can actually just from the comfort of your living room, from your office, you can actually begin kind of planning out your project and know what you're getting into before ever, actually purchasing the products or getting to the job site. We also have 24/7 tech support available. So if you ever have installation questions or any kind of concerns, we're always available to answer questions and help troubleshoot. So can you tell us, Scott, a little bit about electric floor heating?
Well, yeah, what we're going to be talking about mostly, excuse me, mostly today is our electric floor heating, and that is our TempZone product. Our TempZone is what we sell the lion's share of. It is a product that originally started as a tile heater, but now with the different kinds of flooring that come along, there's different ways of installing it to make it not only for tile, but now using it for LVT, using it for laminate. Basically, what we're doing is we're taking either the cable that's loose on a spool or the wire that's attached to the mesh. What we're doing is we're either using it to heat the floor or we're creating a heated subfloor that you can put other types of flooring on top of. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, how to get the right amount, how to install it, and the general stuff like that. So what we want to do is try to make it so it's easy to do from beginning to end. If you haven't done this before, lean on us. We will be glad to help you. All you really need to do is get us a sketch, and we're going to be talking about that here. So go ahead, Lynn.
Yeah, absolutely. So we always like to say to measure the space that you're looking at heating, like you're measuring for cabinets, not flooring. So if you were going to be installing flooring in, say, a kitchen, obviously you're going to end up having flooring generally under things like refrigerators, ovens, cabinets, things like that, places that you wouldn't necessarily want to be putting floor heating. So you want to make sure that you're getting us measurements for the areas that you actually want heated. So don't just say it's a 50 square foot room. Let us know it's a 50 square foot room and I want to heat maybe, 4 feet by 10 feet of that, something like that. So,
Yeah, yeah, very, very important to make sure that we remember that we don't heat under anything permanent. So we're not going to be installing heat under the cabinet. So if you have a 40 square foot room, you're really probably only heating 80% of it. So that's where we get into the to making sure that we get a drawing from you. So how do they get a drawing to us, Lynn?
So really, however is easiest. You can send it in via email. You can either email it to sales@warmlyyours.com, or if you've been working with a rep here previously, you can always reach out to them directly and send it to them. Also on our website, we do have a few different places where you can upload layouts. You can kind of design your own layout and send it in for a quote. Or you can always, fax it to us or give us a call, and we're happy to kind of walk you through, however is easiest to get it in.
Right. And the thing is, when you're doing your measurements, also, I love this picture because this picture shows an air vent in the floor. And people always forget to mark the air vents on their plans when they send them to us. So we can't send heating cable over the top of the air vent. So what the air vent is doing is actually removing the available square footage that you can heat. If you have a tub and you are, let's say you're a pro, and the homeowner said, I've got this great 20 square foot tub that I want to install. Well, that's fine. But if you told us it was 15 square feet, then you're going to have a problem because the more that you add on later, the less available floor space you have to heat. And the thing is, with our heating product, you can't just buy a big spool of it and cut it to length that you want it. You have to buy the right size. And if you send us a drawing at the beginning that shows 20 square feet available, and through changes, adding a cabinet here, adding a tub there, it's now gone down another 5 to 10 square feet, you're probably going to have to get a new drawing, a new installation done, an installation plan done, because you're going to have to go down a size or two in the product that we ship you. So one thing to always remember, it's better to have a little too little than it is to have a little too much. A little too much is a problem. A little too little is, hey, we're fine with that. Because you'll have to remember, you can never alter the heating wire in any way, shorten it or lengthen it.
Awesome. And then kind of talking about how to properly measure for a quote. Can you kind of tell us, if you're on the job site, if you're in your room that you're looking at heating, how would you be measuring that space for an installation plan?
Well, the first thing I would do is I would, after I sent the plan and I got this smart plan back from us, is I would then go to verify the dimensions. That's the first thing you have to do, because if you find, I just talked to a guy last week whose room shrunk by 5 feet. Well, that's a pretty big deal. Um, and what happened is they sent us the plan. We sent it back to them. They checked off that, yeah, it matches. They got out in the field and go, oops, we really didn't check. And now this room is 5 feet shorter than it shows on what we sent you. You have to verify those dimensions, because the thing is, if you start to install it and you don't look at the dimensions, and now the room is 5 feet shorter, you're going to have, what do I do with all this extra product? Well, you can't, as we said before, you can't shorten it. And once it's cut and turned, you can't send it back to us because we can't sell it as new. So now you're stuck. You're going to have to get a different product to put in there. The one thing is, if you find out that the area has changed and the product that we sent you is not going to fit, well, we don't have a restocking fee. So if you find out that the product we sent you is too small, as long as you don't cut it, as long as you don't install it, we'll take it back and we'll get you the right size. But that's the one thing, is you don't want to start an installation before you check the dimensions, because once you do that and you cut the product, it's non-returnable. Otherwise, we'll take it back, no problem, no restocking fee, that's fine. But when you're doing the measurement, you're just going to be measuring around these items in the room. You're going to be measuring around any vanities that are there. You're going to be measuring around any cabinets that are there, because you never put heat under those. You also want to stay away from the wax ring under the toilet. So you stay away from that, at least 4 inches away from the wax ring. So what you're going to do is you're going to make these measurements. You're going to verify that each one of these is correct. And then you're going to say, where does the thermostat go? Because if you take a look at this plan, you'll see here's a T in a circle. The triangle represents the beginning of the mat, and the triangle always represents the beginning. Either it's a cable or it's going to be one of these rolls. It always represents the beginning. So if this is fine, this is fine. However, we usually put it by, if you don't tell us where to put it, we'll put it by a door, because that's where you usually put it, is somewhere near the light switch. However, if you say, well, the customer changed their mind and they want to put the thermostat over here by the vanity, well, you can see that the beginning of the mat is not going to match putting the thermostat over here. Now you've got a problem. Well, easy problem to fix. You just call us and say, hey, I need this redesigned. I need to put the thermostat over here and I need to start the product here. So what we'll do is we'll redesign the product for you so you can use that same size. So when anything changes like that, the thermostat moves, you need to let us know. If the dimensions expand or contract, you need to let us know, because then we'll take care of it for you. We'll do the drawing again at no charge. You'll probably have the drawing either later in the day or tomorrow morning. It's much better to get it correct than not. So that's what you want to do. And also, we offer a lot of products related to showers. So if you have a shower that you're going to be doing, like this shower here, looks like a 4x4 shower to me. We have a pan specifically designed for this size shower, and we have a heating mat designed especially for this shower, and the waterproofing, the curbs, everything you're going to need. So, hey, it's like, hey, we have a shower here. Let's go ahead and get a quote for that too. So we can do a lot of things in the bathroom. All you have to do is tell us what you want us to do, and we will do it for you.
Yeah, that's some really great information. Thank you, Scott. So our third tip is that you always want to make sure that you are using an ohm meter and our circuit check. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're looking for with an ohm meter and what the purpose of those are?
Well, I do this webinar specifically about problem-free installs. I do it every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Central Time. And the way to do a correct installation is to make sure that you have both of these tools. If you're going to be installing floor heating, you need to have a digital ohm meter. You can't do the installation without it because you need to take the ohms readings of the product when you get it, after you lay it out on the floor, before you cover it with any tile or anything else. And then after you've covered it, you need to take the ohms readings again. You write those numbers in the owner's manual. You can't do that unless you get one of these meters. The secret to getting these meters, the meter you want, is to get one with a 200 range. It has the adjuster on the front, so you can turn the knob to the 200 range. A couple words of advice: you never want to use an analog meter with the needle on the front. Just pretend this, it's telling you no, don't use that. Do not use an analog meter. And the other thing you need to do is don't go out and spend a fortune on a meter. Get an inexpensive meter that has the knob on the front, because you do not want to use a self or auto ranging meter. They're very difficult to use for beginners and very difficult to use on floor heating. So get the one that's shown here, has a knob on the front, usually under $20 in any big box store. So that's what the meter does. That's how you test it. But how do you know if something happens to it during your installation? Well, what you do is you attach the circuit check to the wire, and what it does is it's always keeping track of the circuit inside the wire. Inside the wire, you have inside the cable, you have three wires inside. Two wires which are hooked together at the end of the mat or at the end of the cable, that create a circuit that heat up. And then the third wire is a ground. The circuit check, what it does is it's always testing to make sure that your heating circuit is intact, and it's always testing to make sure that you don't have any ground loops or any ground circuit between the ground and either one of those voltage carrying wires. So if you drop a hammer on the wire and you smash all the wires together, it will scream at you because it created a short. If you cut the wire, it'll scream at you because you opened the heating circuit. So it's always keeping track of that. Now, it can't keep track if the wire gets dinged or if it gets cut or whatever, superficial damage. It doesn't see that. It just tells you something bad happens, like an open circuit or a short circuit. So that's how these two tools work together, because you can't hold the meter on the wire over here while you're trying to install the product on the other side of the room. It doesn't work that way. So you take your readings, you attach the circuit check, you go do your work, you take the circuit check off, you test it again with the meter. Once the meter test is done, you put the circuit check back on and then do your installation, then take the circuit check off at the end, and then you're all finished. So in a nutshell, those are the two devices that you need that are going to help you do a problem-free install. And that's what we're all about here. We're trying to let you know in advance what to look for and how to measure and all this stuff so you don't run into these situations when you're there doing the installation. The one thing we have to say when you're testing the product is test it the day you get it. Don't wait until installation day. If something happens to the product between us and you, it's best to know about it while we can get a replacement out to you. Don't wait till the morning of your installation. You have 15 people here to do work on your floor, and all of a sudden you test and go, oops, there's something wrong. I better call. Do that before you do your installation. That's another hint to get that reading done in advance, because that'll make your life go much, much smoother.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. Anything you can do to make your life easier is always a good thing in my book. So when you're looking at kind of starting your project, if I could talk, that would be great. First, you want to make sure that if the floor needs leveling, that you are leveling that using a self-leveling concrete, and then you would install the heat over the top of that, and then you would install your flooring. So again, you want to make sure that you're putting your product, you're putting your heat, you're putting your flooring over a floor, over a foundation that is, intact. Your system is going to be as strong as the subfloor that it's on. Um, Generally, this tends to be more of a concern in older homes and in homes with basements. That tends to be where most of the problems come in, where there's settling, where there's, kind of issues with, uneven flooring or uneven subflooring. So generally, you want to make sure that the floor is completely level and ready to go before moving on with your installation.
Yeah, we get calls, and I can tell. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, and I can tell you the kind of calls we get in old houses. In old houses that are 100 or 150 years old, people will call us after the fact and go, "The center of my room is the floor is colder than the outer edges. Why is the floor colder in the center than it is around the edges?" Um, with our heating, 99 times out of 100, it's either completely on or it's completely off. There's no this part works and that part doesn't. It's one circuit that runs through that floor usually if you're using one cable or one mat. So if someone calls up and goes, the center of my room is cold on the floor, my first question to them is this an old house? Because if it's an old house, I can tell you exactly what they did. They put the heating product directly on the subfloor, and in the center of the room, the subfloor is about 2 to 3 inches lower than it is on the edges where the walls are because of the sag. Now, it may be an inch and a half, maybe two, maybe three, whatever it is, but the further away the cable is from the surface, the colder that surface is going to get. So on the edges, if it's a half an inch or an inch from the surface, it's going to be nice and warm. Out in the center, if it's 2 inches from the top of the flooring surface, it's going to feel much cooler. So that's what you need to keep in mind. If you take a look at the heating wire, the heat only radiates about an inch and a half around the wire in all directions. So it doesn't travel laterally. That's why you can't put heat in the center of the room and have the whole room heat up. That's another common misconception we get here is I just want to heat the center because it heats the whole room. It doesn't. It only heats where that heating product is, plus an inch and a half on either side. That's why on the mats the wire is spaced 3 inches apart, because this wire heats an inch and a half and this wire heats an inch and a half. So that's where you get the nice even spread of heat. So that's very, very important. If you have an older house, flatten the floor first and then put the heat on top of it and then put the heating surface on there. So we'd like to thank Mike at MK Design Build for that hint. That's a fantastic one, something we don't always remember. But as soon as I talk to somebody that says the center of my floor is cold and the outer edges are warm, I know exactly what they're talking about. That's this.
Yes, absolutely. So our fifth tip is how to apply that thinset over your electric floor heating. So we always want you to be using a modified thinset. That can be either a latex or a polymer modified. The word you're looking for mainly is modified when you're shopping for that thinset. And you want to put that down using either a rubber or a plastic trowel so that you're not going to, or that you can minimize the potential damage to the heating cable. If you're going to be putting it down with a metal trowel, there's a lot more that can go wrong. You can, cut or nick the heating cable or something like that. So you want to be sure that you're being relatively careful with how you're putting out that thinset over the top of your floor heating product.
Yeah, we get the question all the time. In our installation manual, it talks about a one-step install and a two-step install. A one-step install is an installation process for somebody that's done hundreds and hundreds of floors. They're a very experienced tiler. And what that one step is the product's laid out on the floor. We're already going to assume that. The thin set is put over the top. The tile is back buttered and the tile is set all in one step. Well, if you're a really good tiler, that's no problem for you. But if you're a beginner, it's very difficult to get the tiles even. We call that lippage. And it's very difficult to get those tiles the same height. So what you're going to do is, if you haven't done hundreds of these floors, is you're going to do this two-step process. And that is, you're going to lay the product out on the floor. You're going to put about a 1/4 inch layer of thinset to encapsulate the wire and hold it all down. And then you're going to come back and you're going to use a little bit more thinset and back buttering the tile and then setting on it. Because then it's much, much easier. You're only working a total of about 3/8 of an inch of thinset total between those two layers. It's much easier to do quality control with thinner layers than it is to worry about trying to get that 3/8 of an inch thickness, get the tiles all set. So that's where, if you have not done this before, you're going to be looking for a two-step installation. Cover it, then come back later and tile it. Also, we get the question all the time is on the mesh. The mesh is like this, and the wire is either on the bottom or the wire is on the top, depending on how you lay it out. You always want to try to get the wire facing down. What you want, this fiberglass mesh on the top, because that does offer an extra layer of protection when you're putting your thin set down with a trowel. It helps keep the wire in place. So that's what you want to do. Wire side down, two-step installation as much as you can.
Great tips. Thank you.
Prodesso, we didn't talk about Prodesso.
Oh,
Is the
yes.
blue mat, and when you're doing that, I'm going to show you what Prodesso is. Prodesso looks like this. Prodesso is the original non-fracture membrane. Well, when you're installing Prodesso, you have to do a tile at a time. You can't just put the Prodesso down, put the cable down, then cover it with Thinset and come back the next day. With Prodesso, you do it all in one step. That's what makes it so much faster to install. Prodesso is a great product to use when you're in a hurry, because you put the Prodesso down, you put the cable in, and then you start tiling over the top. You do not want to put a layer of Thinset over the top of the Prodesso and come back later, because the Thinset will come out of these little divots in the top. You do not want that. Those divots should be filled and covered with Thinset all in one step. So hopefully that helps with it. And I'm saying these because these are the questions that we get all the time. So I figured this is a pretty good place to talk about that.
Absolutely. So the next tip that we want to go over is from Santino Electric, and they are talking about how two sensors are better than one. So generally, all of our thermostats do come with a floor sensor, and this is going to be something that you put into the floor, into kind of the heat mat or in between some cables at the end of the installation, and this is going to run back to the thermostat. This is going to actually let you control the exact temperature of the floor to the degree, which is really good, especially if you are planning on controlling the system through just the floor temperature alone, or if you're planning on, putting down a flooring that would have a maximum temperature, something like an LVT or a hardwood, where the temperature is pretty important. You don't want a lot of temperature variance. You don't want a lot of, you don't want it to go too hot to damage the floor potentially. So having a floor sensor in the floor is a really important step to take during that install. Now, adding a second sensor, like we said here, is better than one. It's very, very rare that a sensor should fail, but it does happen occasionally. And when that would happen, you would need to pull up some tile or pull up some of the floor to remove it and put a new sensor in. However, if you already have a second sensor in the floor ready to go, you can just run that back to the thermostat and have it coiled up in the thermostat box. So it's not hooked up, it's not wired up yet, but it is there kind of on standby. So if the original sensor goes out, you can just very easily switch out the wiring and you have your floor working properly again.
Yeah, when someone orders orders a system from us, the thermostat sensor will be in the thermostat box. So you need to remember to hand that take the sensor out of the thermostat box and hand it to the tile installer, because they're going to need that right away. The thermostat can be put in much, much later, but the sensor needs to go in before the tile covers it up or before anything else covers it up. So if you're looking to buy a product like Lynn said, carpet in the US, if you're looking to do laminate, if you're looking to do LVT, those sort of things, you need to ask the manufacturer what the maximum temperature is, and then that's the temperature you want to set on the thermostat. You can't keep track of the floor temperature unless you've installed a sensor, so it's required for those jobs. Also, we know right away when you call us and you say, my floor is showing 140 degrees and it won't come on, and it's 60 in here. What's the problem? Well, the reason why it's showing 140 degrees is because both thermostat sensors have been attached to the thermostat, and the ohms are way off of what it's looking for. So as soon as someone says it's 110 or 140 and it doesn't heat, it's because two sensors are hooked up. Just install one, and like Lynn said, coil the other one up and sit it inside the box. So in case that one ever does fail, you can hook it up. One thing that we didn't talk about here that we need to make sure that we tell you is that the floor sensor wire cannot go in the same conduit
Yes.
as your high voltage leads. So the leads that run from the thermostat down the wall and out across the floor to the heating product, that goes in its own conduit. The sensor wire, depending on where you live, the National Electric Code may or may not, or your local code may or may not require that it goes in a conduit. So it can either hang in the wall or in its separate conduit, but they cannot go in the same conduit as your high voltage leads. We get that question all of the time. So I'm glad that we actually remembered to talk about that. So that hint is courtesy of Santino Electric. So thank you, folks there from Santino Electric, for that hint.
Absolutely. So now if someone does forget to put that floor sensor in during the initial install, what would be their options? What can they do at that point, Scott?
Well, they're going to have to get the sensor out there somehow. So the best thing to do is, we're going to go down here to the final point at the bottom of the slide, is to find out where the heat is, and to find out especially where the heating wire is. Because what we're going to do is we're going to put a very small sensor. We have a retrofit sensor for the people that forget to install their one that comes in the box, one that will fit in a grout line. So what they're going to need to do is they're going to need to route out the grout line from the wall over to the heated area. It can't sit in the non-heated area between the heat and the wall. If you put it here, your system will never work. It has to go over the heated portion. Well, the thing is, when you're putting the wire in the grout line, you want to make sure that the grout line is not over one of the heating wires. And I'm going to show you what a thermal picture can show for you. So here, if we take a look at the thermal camera, you can see exactly where the wires are. What you want to do is you want to make sure that you pick a grout line that's between two of the wires, not sitting directly on top of the wire. Because if you do that, you will have what we call short cycling. If the sensor is sitting right on the wire heats up really quick. As soon as power gets to it, it'll heat up. Well, the last thing you want to do is to have the sensor sitting right on top of it, because it goes from 70 to 90 in about 2 seconds. Well, as soon as it goes to 90, the system will shut off. and then it cools off just like that when the power is off of it. So then it goes down to 70 and it goes, oops, we need to turn it back on again. So all it does is just it short cycles. It turns on for a few seconds, turns off for a few seconds, on and off, on and off. And by the time it's doing that, it's never heating the floor. So that's what you have to do. That's why the sensor placement needs to go between the two wires, not on top of the wire, because if you put it on one of the wires, it'll short cycle and your floor will never heat. So the idea here is this is kind of a pain to do. It's much better to install it before you put the tile on. But if you do it here, you want to do it right. So the best thing to do is find a friend that has a thermal camera and find out where that spot is, find out where the heat is, and make sure it's not sitting on a wire.
Great. That's some really good tips. I think the sensor gets overlooked occasionally as such an important part of the system.
Mm-hmm.
So our next tip is talking about, which we kind of brushed on earlier, uncoupling membranes or our Prodesso membrane. So this is a plastic membrane that would go on the subfloor, and it really helps prevent the tile and the grout from cracking over time. It isolates the tile from any kind of minor movement or shifting in the subfloor to give it a little bit more support, a little bit more a little bit more flexibility. Can you tell us a little bit more about Prodesso and how it gets installed? All of, some good tips on that, Scott?
Well, the best thing to do when you're doing a floor installation with Prodesso, Prodesso is the inventor of the isolation membrane with heating. So if you've seen these products of different colors that have the heating cable in them, this is the company that started the whole thing, and they're the ones that patented it. And this product is proven. It's been installed in millions and millions of square footage installations. It's been used for years. It's very, very good. But when you get it, read the installation manual because it'll tell you what type of thin set to use to adhere to what type of subfloor. You use different thin set if you're attaching it to concrete than you would if you're using wood, or in case you're using backer board. Depending on what your product is that you're going to be doing, what type of subfloor you're going to be covering, make sure you read the installation. We can't go into the detail. We'll get into minutia that we just don't have time for. But when you get this, it's designed to be used with a specific type of thin set, which you can find anywhere. It just is it need to be fast acting, rapid set? Does it need to be modified or non-modified? All this stuff you can get at any store. So it's not like you're going to have to go, travel the world to find this stuff. It's just that you need to know which bag to look for when you go to the store. So you want to make sure that this will help the floor stabilize. What it's doing is it's actually separating the tile and the heat from the rest of the floor. So the rest of the floor can move, but the tile above it doesn't. So that's what it's designed to do. It's isolate one moving subfloor from a stationary tile floor. So it's very, very important if you're using stone, natural stone, as opposed to porcelain tile. Stone is something that you're always going to have to do 2 layers of subfloor, for an example. And if you're not using stone, you may be able to get away with 1. You just need to do a deflection test to see if the floor is sturdy enough. And we're not going to get into deflection tests either now. Tile people that do these floors know how to do the deflection test. Just make sure they have that they do one to make sure that you're not installing it on a. Some floors are just so bouncy that you can never install tile on it without cracking the tile or without getting a cracked grout line. So that's what the deflection test is going to do. It's going to tell you, is this floor able to be tiled or not?
Great. Yeah, that's something I would never think of, but that's why I don't install tile. So talking kind of about, again, talking about grout floating for Prodesso, can you kind of tell us, how this would work with the cable being, put into place?
Yeah, because if you do an installation of any size of this loose cable in the Prodesso, your fingers are going to get extremely sore because it's a lot of pushing, pushing down, pushing down. What the secret is to get a tile float, or I'm sorry, a grout float, a rubber or a plastic one that will not gouge the wire, because you don't want to use a metal one for this because you'll take the covering right, the wire right off. So you're using this rubber or plastic. Rubber's the best, and you're actually guiding it with your hand and pushing it down with the float as you go. And that's going to save your fingers, because no matter how old you are, your fingers are going to be yelling at you the next day or two if you don't use this. So it saves your fingers. It makes it so you can actually pick up your soda pop can in the afternoon as opposed to just trying to hold on to it like this and take a drink later on. It makes the installation go a lot quicker and it's a lot less painful.
Anything
And
that makes an installation easier and less painful is definitely a good thing in my book.
right. So thanks to Mike at MK Design Build, another great tip that he's found over the time to install this product.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Mike. So, tip number 11 is talking kind of about how you would go about replacing a tile when you have electric floor heating underneath. So, as long as you have spares of the tile that's in that space, a tile can always be replaced. It isn't the end of the world if a tile over time should crack or if there's an issue with that. The main thing to keep in mind with replacing tiles that have electric floor heating underneath them is that you want to make sure to isolate that tile from the rest. So the first step would be actually scoring that grout line around the tile, all around the tile. And then from there, you want to carefully break that tile with a hammer. You don't want to start prying at it. You don't want to start, messing with, trying to rip it off from the floor or from the thin set. You want to, eventually that'll end up causing problems with the neighboring tiles as well as the wire and the cable that is underneath them. So you want to make sure to just very carefully, slowly start breaking that tile into pieces and pulling those smaller pieces up.
Yeah, it's very important to do that. And before you even start doing this, is you want to put a circuit check. Take the non-heating lead off of the back of the thermostat and install the circuit check onto it. So if you're doing this work and you hit a wire and it goes, "Bah," makes that alarm, it knows that that last thing you did, there's a problem there. So that way you can isolate it, put a circle around it, and then start working to fix that cable while you're at it. So you definitely want to do that. If you don't score the grout line, when you smash the tile, that can radiate through the floor. Cutting that grout line, indenting into it, will keep that shock from traveling to the rest of the floor. So that's why it's important to score that grout line. Also, if you're doing this, you're going to want to try to get rid of some of the thinset that's already there, because you're going to have to put some thinset on the back of the tile, and you're going to need to set it down in the floor so it's not, a half inch higher than the other ones around it. So the best thing to do is, if you know that you're going to be going in and doing this, is to get a thermal camera from somebody. And thermal cameras, I tell you, the first thermal camera we bought here was, I think, $4,500. Like, so almost $5,000 for a thermal camera. You can get the miniature ones now for 200 bucks. So that price has completely changed from when we started using thermal imaging. But what you want to do is, when you break that tile, is turn the system on, find the location of the wire with your thermal camera, and then take a magic marker and mark the locations of those wires. And then you know that those wires are going to be 3 inches apart. So what you do is you pick a half an inch, inch and a half from each wire, and start chiseling there. Because what you can do then is you can chisel up enough thinset between those wires that you can get a new fresh grab with your new thinset to grab the subfloor. Because you may or may not get good results unless you give it something fresh to bite into, and it may not adhere really well to the existing thin set there. So if you're going to be doing that and you need to get some fresh thin set to subfloor connection, you're going to have to chisel away some of that thin set. And the best way to do it is find where the wire is with your camera, mark it, and then chisel in between it to give you some space to do that.
Great, great tips. So, our 13th tip is talking about actually managing the paths from the cold lead. So, you want to, make sure that the direction your cold lead, or mark the direction where your cold leads will be coming from your thermostat. So, you want to be very careful with these cold leads as well. You don't want to nail too close to them. You want to use something like a construction adhesive, and make sure that whoever is going to be working on that in that space, whether that be an electrician, a tiler, somebody even coming in to put cabinets in, something like that, all trades that are working on this job, make sure to warn them that there is a spot or whatever areas that they need to be especially careful around.
I can tell you, if you don't tell the people that are installing door stops, they're going to drill right through the wire. If
Yes.
you if you don't tell the trim professionals to put their trim nail directly in this direction as opposed to angling it down, those people that don't want to bend over very much and angle it down to hold it on, that has a good chance of hitting your cold lead if you're running it around the perimeter of the room. Also, if you're installing transitions, people ask us, well, what's the best? I think, wait, hold on a second. Hey, we've got some questions from folks that we have asked their previous to call us or to let us know if they have questions that we want to address. So James has this great question: suggestions on transition strip between a tile floor and an LVT floor. Use something that is not screwed in. First of all, so if some sort of adhesive to hold it down, and if you ever if you've ever received one of our installation plans, we don't go into the doorway between the rooms, and there's a reason why that we don't go into the doorway all the way up to the carpet in the other room. Is we stay away from there, because if you have carpet in your bedroom and tile in your bathroom, you do not want somebody coming in and put a nailing strip down right into the wire. So that's why we keep the heat away from the entrance to the room. We assume when we're doing installation that your foot may get cold on one step on the way in, but stays warm inside the room. Also, your foot may hit a cold tile on the way out. But once again, you're on the way in or on the way out of the room. What you want to do is you want to make sure that the areas you walk around inside the room are warm, and stay away from the transitions, because that way, I can't tell you the number of floors I've had to go out and repair because they put a nail down transition in and they nailed into the wire that was in, because they said, well, we need to heat this. Please don't heat the area in the doorway. Just assume that if you happen to step on that area, it may be chilly, but big deal. You're on your way out or you're on your way in, so it doesn't matter. But you can do a lot of damage if you put a transition in there that you screw in. So that all relates to Teresa's question, which is question number one. And thank you, Teresa and James, for your questions. Is how often do wires get damaged while tiling and flooring? Well, if it happened all the time, we wouldn't be giving you this webinar, because our lights would be off and we'd be out of business. So obviously, very, very few people have trouble over the 20 plus years that we've been in business. And all I can tell you, from I manage the tech support department, and all I can tell you is that the people that read the instructions tend to have problem-free installations. The people that don't read the instructions and don't watch these webinars tend to have problems because they don't follow what we do as safety precautions. They don't use a meter to test. They don't test the product ahead of time. They don't use a circuit check. They put wires. I mean, it's pretty much everything that we've been talking about. They do the opposite because they didn't read the instructions. So, I mean, I sound like a guy that writes instruction manuals, because I am. But the thing is, you will have much, much better installation, problem free, if you just follow the installation instructions. And the instructions are not that long, 10 pages with pictures. So, they're really, really good. And so every once in a while, if you do damage the wire when you install it, the idea is to use a circuit check. So if you do damage it when you were installing it, the thing will scream at you and tell you to stop. And that way you can address it and fix it before you put the tile on the top. That's the idea. And that's why you need the meter to do your testing. So it doesn't happen a lot. And if you find out that something happened, like somebody put a door stop in that shouldn't have, or somebody put a glass wall partition and they used screw into the tile to hold the glass in place, you can find that spot, even if it's an isolated spot where they clean the grout lines with a blade. Instead of cleaning the grout lines as they go of Thinset, they come back a week later and cut into the grout line. You can find that spot. We have the tools that you can use to find those spots. So we've been doing this a long time. We have a lot of tools that our competitors don't, and we have a lot of knowledge when it comes to this. So fortunately, you don't have a lot of damage when you do the installation. And if for some reason something does happen, we have a way to find it. So hopefully these few little tips and hints that you're getting today are going to help you find out that, hey, I just had a problem-free installation. This has been awesome.
Yeah, it's shocking what following the tips from the experts will get you, which is a problem-free installation.
Right. So I have a question here from Gabrielle. And what's the protocol for initiating the heat? I've heard it's important to heat slowly, especially with marble tile, to prevent cracking. Well, we don't really have a lot of problems with tile, but what you want to look for is to find out if the manufacturer says you have a temperature limit, high and low, which means you can heat the temperature up to 81 or 82, and you can deviate from that 2 or 3 degrees per day, and that's it. because our thermostats have a setback feature, which means when no one's using them, you can heat it up to 85, and then when no one's using it, take it down to 68, and you can do that with tile. That's no problem. That's a setback. But certain flooring like hardwood, some marble, places, products like that have you can only go to 82, and you have a maximum deviation of 3 degrees per day. That's what you need to ask about. And if you have a maximum 3-degree deviation per day, which means when you're commissioning the product in the fall, you're turning it on for the first time, you
Mhm.
turn it up 2 degrees. Then the next day, you turn it up 2 degrees. And the next day, you turn it up 2 degrees until you get to the point where the maximum temperature is. And then you set it and forget it. You keep it there the whole time. That way, you're complying with their rules. So that may be what you've heard, Gabrielle. That's the way you do it when you have a product that has a minimum and maximum deviation per day. So then in the springtime, when you go to turn it off, you lower it 2 degrees. Then you lower it 2 degrees the next day. And the next day you drop it 2 degrees until you finally get to the point where it's turned off. So that hopefully is the answer to your question, Gabrielle. That's a great question. And always ask the manufacturer what their temperature requirements are. Gabrielle has another great question. You don't mind if I answer this one, do you?
Please.
Tell me about maintaining heat level versus up and down temps. I think we just talked about that. This is especially true. I just did a hardwood floor a couple years ago where now it's getting to the point here in the Midwest where we're going to turn it up 2 degrees every day because it's a hardwood floor and we don't want to get 85 degrees and then 70. 85 and 70, because then you have contraction. And what a lot of people don't realize, and this may not pertain to you, Gabrielle, because you're talking about tile, but when it comes to heating wood floors, you can do it very easily with electric. Heating wood floors with electric is much better than using hot water because hot water has overshooting and undershooting, which means if they turn their thermostat on to 80, it'll go to 82, and then it'll go to 78, 83, and 77. And it just does this the whole day. Where with electric, it keeps it right at the temperature within a half a degree the whole time. So you don't have that overshoot and undershoot, overshoot and undershoot. So that's what's so good about our thermostats, as long as you remember to install the sensor. That's very, very important to do that. So check with your manufacturer, find out what your max temperature is, find out what your maximum deviation per day is, and we can work around that. So that's a great question, Gabrielle. Thank you so much for your questions, and thanks to the other questions we had. So that was good.
Yes,
I like it when people ask questions.
absolutely. It makes it a little bit more fun for us.
Yeah.
So our last tip comes from Advanced Design Studio, and their tip is to introduce products to your customers. So quoting floor heating for jobs as an option for customers to consider if you have someone who, wants their master bathroom remodeled, kind of just getting a quote for that, potential floor heating to show them, that it can be very cost effective, it can be easy to install, and that it can really add a lot of extra luxury and warmth, obviously, to your whatever project you're working on. To get a quote like that to be able to give to customers, we usually can get a quote over to you within the same day or usually by the next business day, so that we can actually make it very easy for you to present that information to a client very quickly. If at the last minute you say maybe we should get a quote for floor heating for this customer, just to show them what they would be looking at if they decided to move forward with it, we're happy to get that done for you as expediently, if that's a word, as possible. And then if you are completing a job or kind of in the middle of a job, it doesn't hurt to always, throw in recommending a towel warmer or a radiant panel as an easy way to, add a little bit of extra warmth to a room. If there's a room that, you finished and the customer says, oh, it's kind of cold, I wish I would have done floor heating, maybe suggest a radiant panel or a towel warmer to kind of add a little bit of extra warmth to that space.
Yeah, I went over to a friend of mine's house a few years ago, $1 million house, easy, maybe a $1.5 million house. And I went there, and she had a sunroom in the back, and she was watching TV, and she goes, we love to watch the Bears out here because they're from Chicago area. Insert your local team here, but they like to watch football in that space. But the problem is it was cold in the wintertime. That's when football's played, right? So I said, well, why didn't you put floor heat under your tile floor? Because it would have been, oh, I didn't know you could. There are people out there that don't know you can heat floors. And it's amazing that people, we don't assume that, we just assume everybody knows what we know, right? But the thing is, a lot of people don't know you can heat the floor. So obviously, they missed the boat on getting floor heat there, but they really could have used a radiant panel to put in that room to throw some heat at them to make it much more comfortable. So it may not be the opportunity you're working on now. It may have been the one 2 months ago where, oh man, I forgot that we could have heated the floor. Let's get some warmth in that room. Let's get a radiant panel in there. Infrared heat. So there's a lot of things you can think about. Whenever you see a shower on the plan that you get, hey, we've got shower pans, we've got heating cables designed specifically for those sizes, and we've got the drains, and we've got the waterproofing, and we have the curbs. So let's go ahead and quote that shower too. So think about what you're seeing on the plan, not just floor heat, and then think about, hey, 2 months ago we did a job where this might come in handy. So that's exactly correct, Lynn. Thank you for bringing that up, and thank you to Advanced Design Studio for that great hint.
Yes, for sure. So, are there any other questions that you might have for us that you'd like us to kind of, chat about? Or, oh, Gabrielle does. Can you heat a tiled or wood porch that is exposed below to elements or exposed to the elements?
The answer to that is yes, but the problem is when we deal with heating, is you have heat loss up and heat loss down. So if you don't have any insulation below the floor, the heat's going to go there. It's going to go to the coldest area. It's going to find the coldest area. So think about one thing we didn't talk about here today, and then we could go on for hours about heat loss. But what you want to do is you want to think about things that cause heat loss. And those are things like windows. Those are things like skylights. Those are doors to exterior, to the outdoors, exterior walls, a room that has four interior, the wall, if you're in a bathroom in a house and all the walls around it are interior, you're going to have a lot less heat loss than if you are with this gigantic room that's got three walls to the outdoors. It's got gigantic windows in all those walls, and it has actual skylights. And all you need to do there to make it a complete and total mess is to throw in a fireplace, because all of those items are huge heat loss factors where the heat escapes. So a room that's naturally four insulated walls that don't face outdoors is going to heat a lot warmer, a lot faster than a room like this where I am with all these windows, all this exterior wall. This is very difficult to heat, period, let alone with floor heat. So what you're going to, we've done this, yes, to answer your question, 3 minutes later, Gabrielle, I'm sorry, but you can heat those spaces. You want to insulate the subfloor. You want to put Cerazorb or cork on top of the subfloor, put the heating wire on top of it. And then what you want to do is you want to use the product that doesn't have any heat regulation limits. So if you have a choice to do a room that's very difficult to heat, your best choice to use to heat that space would be for it to be tile, because tile, you can set it to 104 and never worry about it, because the tile will not be affected by that heat. You won't ruin it. However, if you decide I want to use a laminate, what's the maximum temperature of the laminate? 82 degrees. Well, you can see where you have a floor that's 82 degrees or a floor that's 104 degrees. Which one do you think will heat the room better? You want to choose something that's going to not let the heat escape down the bottom, which is insulation underneath, also Cerazorb under the cable, and then tile on top, because that lets the heat radiate into the space. So hopefully that helps you. A room that has heat surrounding it above and below and on the sides is going to heat much better than a room that has cold below it, cold above it, or cold around it. So just keep that in mind. And hopefully that answers your question.
And Olivia says there are no questions on Facebook currently, so I
Okay.
believe we are good.
Very good. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for the questions ahead of time and for the ones today.
So next month we will have our webinar on November 11th. So it's another Thursday at 1 Central. And this webinar is going to be about how to get winter ready or get your home winter ready with heating luxury vinyl tiles. So please join us for that. Again, I love talking about heating LVT. I don't know about you, Scott, so that'll be a fun one.
LVT is very, very popular. Very, very popular. So yeah, I'm not even going to ruin it. I say, come join us next month.
And then also, if you'd like to join us for our daily trainings, they are also here on Crowdcast. We do at least one a day. Oftentimes we do two a day, and those are usually hosted by me or Scott or another one of our technicians here at WarmlyYours. So those often will just last, 5 to 10 minutes, unless we get, into a conversation with someone. If someone pops in with lots of questions, we're happy to chat. And you can just pop in, learn a little bit more about, an installation, learn more about our products, as well as, get any questions answered that you might have. And this month we are offering 20% off of our Environ Easy Mats. So these are mats that would be going underneath carpet, laminate, or floating or engineered wood. So if you want to learn more about those and see the promotion, visit WarmlyYours.com to learn more about all of that.
Those products are great. They're like giant heating blankets. They're very, very quick to install. Probably our easiest installation, and it's great because they're on sale now too.
Absolutely. So after this is over, we'll be sending over an email asking about your experience during today's webinar. We love hearing comments, suggestions. I don't know about you, Scott. I like getting compliments about how great my webinars are. So if you feel like telling us that, that would be wonderful. But honestly, we do value your feedback, and we really want to make sure that our webinars are aimed at, answering questions that you have and that things that you actually do want to learn about and that are helpful to you. So please let us know if we can do anything better or differently. And how can they get a hold of us, Scott, if they ever have anything come up or have questions?
Well, I think there's this thing called social media. Isn't there like this thing, social media? Do we have a MySpace page? Has anybody checked into that lately? Olivia, can you?
I'm almost certain we do not have a MySpace page.
Olivia is the brains behind this whole thing, and she's the quiet one there in the middle. But I guess we don't have a MySpace page, but you can find us everywhere else. So it's by exclusion. You can check that out. Facebook. Um, Wherever it's everywhere. We're everywhere. We're everywhere. So you can always email us, and you can always call us any time of the day or night. We'll be glad to help you out. And if you're watching us on Facebook right now, you already know about that. So thank you for doing that too.
So that is all we have today. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, my name is Lynn here for Warmly Yours. I am joined by Scott. And until next time, stay warm.
And be radiant. Bye, everybody.